When my nieces were much younger, I remember a time when I was sitting at the dinner table with them and we were just chatting. And for some reason, and I don't know the context, I simply said, "Don't you hate it when that happens?" And they both looked at me and said, "Mom says that's not the word we're supposed to use." An embarrassing moment for uncle, godfather, and priest. It wasn't the first time, nor was it the last time that my nieces taught me something. 3 weeks ago in the gospel, we hear Jesus say, "I've come not for peace, but for division." This week, the gospel words from Jesus are, "Unless you hate father, mother, spouse, children, brother, sister, even your very self, you can't be my disciple." Now, as you heard those words or you read them ahead of time, how many of you perhaps had the same reaction as a few weeks ago? Taken aback, surprised, going, "What's with it?" I would guess some, if not many. Show of hands? Yeah. I suspect in their innocence, my nieces would have said to Jesus, "Our mom says you're not supposed to use that word." As with many things, we need to understand the cultural context of Jesus' world. For just as the word love has a different meaning, so does the word hate. For us today, some definitions, hate is a dislike for something or someone, perhaps colored by animosity, ill will, and or even anger. A synonym for the word is despise. We have even begun to speak about hate crimes today. And so, for Jesus and his world, hate simply means to be detached from, to be apart from. And so, when he says, whoever wants to be my disciple needs to hate, needs to be detached from their family, he's saying something different. And perhaps we need to take a moment just to talk about the word family. For us today, the nuclear family is a key unit, those with whom we live. In Jesus' world, the extended family, not only siblings, parents, but cousins who lived next door, grandparents who lived in the same house, Uncle Fred who ran the market, and Susie who had a seamstress place. That is the most important unit in their life. It was the extended family that gave them honor and status within the community. It was the extended family who provide for various needs, education, finance, social, even faith. And so Jesus is saying goodbye to that. I think it's sort of like if you detach yourself from this extended family, you're lost. You've lost a sense of security, you've lost a sense of income. You are like the prodigal son who said goodbye. In a way, you lose everything that matters. I think what Jesus is saying when he says you need to hate your family, you need to be detached from your family, is the question, am I willing to let go of those things we are most familiar with, most feel secure about, that bring us comfort, security? Are you willing to let go of that family and become part of a new extended family, whom we will call disciples in the church? Here's where it gets interesting. I'd like you just to take a moment and look around the people who are seated near you, which means you have to move your head multiple directions. Just take a look and see who's there. The question is, are you and am I willing to be detached from that which is most important to us and be attached to the people you see around us as disciples, as being bonded to them as family? If you have done that or are doing it, hopefully it's empowering for you. If you aren't doing it, what can we do to help you get attached as disciples? Our second reading is a very short section of a very short letter that Paul writes to a man named Philemon. It's the shortest, most private, most personal letter in the Christian scriptures. And the question for me was, why is it in there? This would be like just sending an email to someone. Why is it anyone else's business? For those that don't know the story, Philemon is a rather affluent disciple, probably living in Colossae. We know he's affluent because there is a church community that gathers at his home. He also has slaves. We hear that Onesimus has run away from Philemon. And he wandered and came upon Paul, who he knew of because Philemon was a disciple formed by Paul. And so he becomes a believer, a disciple, even an assistant, while Paul is imprisoned. And though Paul would love to keep him as an assistant, he says to him one day, "Onesimus, I'm sending you back to Philemon." And Onesimus says, "Do you have any other ideas of what you'd like to do?" Because more than likely, one of the reasons Philemon is upset is Onesimus took something he shouldn't have taken when he left. Paul's like, "No, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go back to him. In fact, I'm going to write a letter to a company. We don't have internet, so I'm going to have to send it to you. And what I'm going to simply do is ask Philemon, would he receive you back? Not as a slave alone, as a brother. In other words, would Philemon be willing to receive you as a member of the family?" That is a little uncomfortable, but I can tell you what else I'll do. "And if anything is owed you, Philemon, I, Paul, will repay it. But I'm asking you to put your faith into practice. And are you willing to do it?" The interesting thing is, like the other prodigal son brother, we don't know what Philemon does. When Onesimus shows up at the door, knocks and said, "Hi, here's a letter from Paul. I hope you take me back in." So, once again, the word calls us to discipleship, perhaps in some different ways. It calls us, are we willing to detach ourselves from that which is most important, gives us comfort, security, purpose, meaning? Are we willing to do that as Jesus invites us? Are we willing, as Paul challenges Philemon, to look at people, at situations differently precisely because of our faith? That's what Paul is asking him to do. Put it into practice. That's our task for the week in discipleship. The good news is, being fed by the body and blood of Christ, we receive that strength and grace we need to try to live it out. So this is the food for us to be disciples in the world.